It's 91.3 FM, WVD and WVD HD1 Newark. Team Nitty Reds officially back in the building, back on the block, and banging out your eardrum. We are in here with Mayoral Candidate Kevin Kelly, and we've been tackling the issues. Now, what I want to touch on next, this is something that I've been a resident of the city of Wilmington since 2012. So, not terribly long. Prior to that, I lived, most of the time I lived in Delaware was in the suburbs. All right, I'm originally from New York, that everybody knows. But now, being a resident of the city of Wilmington, of course, a lot of things I see now. I could just walk outside and see it. Whereas back when I was living in Pike Creek, I had to see it on the news or you hear about it. But now I walk out my door, I see, and I do a lot of walking, I do a lot of running. Kevin Kelly knows I'm in the fitness, so I'm all over the city. I was just telling some of my friends the other day. I said, I just realized, I think it was Thursday. I realized I covered about 11 miles walking around the city, handling errands and things of that nature. And one of the things that bothers me, and I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit when you spoke about vacant properties and how that can affect things. But we see, if you've been around Wilmington for a while, you see the face of Wilmington is changing in terms of the buildings that are going up, the constant construction. If you go out north side, like up Governor Prince, you'll see a bunch of new housing up there that wasn't there, some odd years ago. Even if you just walk down Market Street from, let's say, Riley Square to the riverfront, slew of new buildings, and it's developing, right? And the thing that gets me, though, here's the thing that bothers me a little bit. Yeah, I'm glad I moved in. I'm kind of a part of this explosion, but then there's a big chunk of the population who I feel is being pushed out, if you will. All right. Now, I hate to throw the term gentrification out.
You're going to call that out.
But it is what it is, right? And yes, properties are being built up, but now I feel like we're getting to a point where, one, it's becoming too difficult for the poor people to afford, rents that will be going up. People that have been staples in this community here, and I feel like they're getting pushed out and other people are coming in. And I truly feel like it's the black people. I'm just saying it's the black people I feel like that are being most affected. The poor people, let's say the black and the brown people, the Hispanics and everybody, the poor people being affected by this. So, and it's not to say that I'm against development. Right. Nobody would be against, development. That's progression, if you will. Right. But how do we do this without then, casting out the people that have been here all their lives, paying their taxes to the city of Wilmington, struggling and break their backs to find jobs and work, the ones who have jobs work, raising their kids and trying to make a better place. What do we do about it?
Well, I think gentrification kind of it helps and hurts at times. You brought people in with more income who can help the city be stronger, but it also pushes those out somewhere else because they're struggling to begin with.
Okay.
What you've got to look at is how you have mixed-use housing. If you look at housing in a city, people kind of live around people who look like them, act like them, have the same economic background as them. So when you have things like that, you got to say, how do we hold on to this certain portion of the area that's not going to change? These same folks are going to change, so we have these neighborhoods are more integrated with people, so people don't feel threatened. Because you look at downtown, you're right. Once downtown fills up where you live at, they've got to go east and west.
Right.
East isn't much left to go towards because they're going to go west towards West Center City. Now, you had a lot of that back in the late 80s where people bought those big houses on 4th Street.
Right.
But what the city's got to come and say, okay, we're in for this development, but we want mixed income of people to be in neighborhoods because that's the way folks should live. People well off, people not as well off, and then everybody learns from each other. So when you grow up, hey, I want to be like Mr. Brown, he's a teacher, or hey, I want to be like Mr. Kelly, he's an engineer.
Right.
But you got to be careful with gentrification. You're right, because it can help and hurt a neighborhood. What we need to do first before that is hold all these landlords accountable for these vacant properties and these nuisance properties where people raising heck all hours of the night in the house, stores that are raising heck. You need to shut those down, and either get them fixed up or do something with them.
Okay, and that's a great point that you brought up. Nuisance properties, nuisance stores, businesses, things of that nature. So when I think about this, and I try to think about it from a standpoint of, well, what resources do the people need in the city, right? What do they need? What's very accessible to? Because now, of course, when I think about the poor people in the city, many of them rely on the DART, the bus system to get around. Okay. Of course, thank you, for them finally instituting Sunday service some odd years ago.
I was the guy that originated that.
And I remember when DART wasn't running. I was living here when DART wasn't running. So I couldn't, and coming from New York, I just couldn't understand. I was like, first of all, how do buses have a curfew? Why is the bus system stopped?
Right.
But then when I found that there's a whole day they didn't run on, I was like, but people still work on Sundays or go to church and things of that nature, major holidays, right? So now, going back to my point, though, because I digressed a little bit, what resource does the city need? So when I walk around the city, let's say I could walk 10 blocks And out of those 10 blocks, how many times will I have seen the liquor store, right? Or some other business, you know, or things of that nature. But then, if I want to get to the grocery store, let's say to get some fresh produce or some, you know, some healthy food for my children, because of course, a lot of people say, you know, if you eat right, that'll lead to better things. If you eat wrong or don't eat at all, problems will arise, right?
Yep.
And when I think about supermarkets, okay, Acme is down in Charlie Square. If I live on the east side, Charlie Square is not that. I can't just up and walk to Charlie Square, you know, unless walking is really my thing. But then come back with groceries. Right. All right. Yeah, sure you can take the bus. That's a struggle in and of itself. But then, what if you? What if because they're changing the service on the Route 10, which runs down in the trolley, right? I think it's not going to run on Sundays anymore, if I'm not mistaken. I think that just got instituted as of February 14th. And again, who's affected by that? The poor people. You know, or I think about these things, but then how do we continue to bring these resources in? Because we touched on it already, you know, the gentrification, we want to avoid that, but then we need things that the poor people in the city need to, you know, to make it be more attainable. For instance, we have these businesses on Market Street, right, the Market Street Mall, and I see them coming up, and I appreciate them. I patronize many of these places, but you know as well as I do, come 6, 7 o'clock. You might got a couple bars open.
Nobody's around.
Come Sunday, you could just see tumbleweed going down Market Street. What do we do to rectify? Because again, the people, see, I feel like it's designed for the folks who don't live in the city. They come into work for the big banks or whoever's all around, and they take their money back out of the city with them when they leave at night or on the weekends or what have you. But the poor people whose money is still going into the city, they can't even spend that money in the city because these resources are not available to them.
There's like 10 different issues there you got to address. Okay, for one, is I'll put my health and social service hat. So what we've been trying to do is have healthy neighborhood stores. You have all these local stores that just want to sell you junk food. I got an EBT card, easy for me to go and get that EBT and get whatever the heck that I got to see what's going on. So you got to bring food like Farmers Market, like the East Side and Cool Springs, and bring some food to them as well. We also have to have, you're right, the stores are not cropping up. There's we call it food deserts, where people just don't have access to good quality food. You ride around the city, you see how overweight young people are, and most people in general. They're not exercising, they're not eating well. That causes self-esteem issues and a lot of things go on. So how do we start making people better through some of these stores? How do we get corner stores to be owned by people in the city? You know what I mean? When's the last time you walked in a corner store that you knew the guy and he was from the neighborhood? None of us. It's not anywhere. Not they're saying they're doing a bad job, but all of our dollars are getting exported out somewhere else. They're not reinvesting. They don't hire young people from the city to work or anybody else.
Exactly.
As for, you know, downtown with economic development, how do we take, you know, downtown and move it out a few blocks? You know what I mean? I was downtown last night at Nomad. Nobody's out walking around. You know, you have the art loop and things like that work very well. But how do we get a vibrant downtown again with all kind of different venues? You like this, you like that, for people to go. Well, first you've got to make it safe, but you also, from my understanding, you got to get the city sometimes gets in there a little bit of a tussle with other people who want to do some creative arts and things downtown. You may want to look at how you elevate that to a cultural affair that looks at cultural affairs throughout the whole city and engage young people, because like I said, young people want to do music, they want to do videos, and how do you spread that across everyone to see what happens. But going back to it, we've got to have healthier food for people to be able to look at. You've got to figure out how do we get a grocery store on the east side. The last one I think we had was over the 12th Street Bridge. It's been some time since that's happened. So people need to say, okay, where can we do that? When was the last time you were an African-American owned bank? You know, there's some things you really need to say, look, put on a plan and say, here's what we want to do to make our neighborhoods better. Mr. Mayor, how can you help us get where we're at? You got to talk from the bottom up instead of the top down.
Definitely, and also another thing is, again, speaking to the development. For instance, let's say BPG, Buccini Polo Group. You know, putting up properties all over the place, right?
They got them all.
Exactly, and then I had to ask the question is, because of course, another one of the big things you hear about is jobs or lack thereof in the city of Wilmington for the poor people, but when I see, you know, all these new buildings and things going up, well, of course, you need people to work. You need construction workers, flaggers, everything and anything that goes into building these things. But what I don't hear about, and I could be wrong, you know, or ignorant to it, I just haven't, what I have or don't really hear about is where's the plan, if you will, put in place for, okay, well, if you want to come in and develop, you know, in the city, let's set aside a chunk of these jobs for a chunk of these residents who are currently struggling for work or out of work, or even so, because I know sometimes it's a matter of skill. Then where's the plan or the program to take these potential candidates for employment, train them, give them the necessary skills so that they can be employed by BPG or whoever else wants to develop in the city. So that way we can start to rectify the problem of the poverty in the city, which can lead to rectifying the problem of the crime in the city, and a bunch of other things.
So with that, I think BPG has done a very good job of developing the city. But they've built a lot of buildings, and I think without them, we'd probably be in a much different position than we are now. But we also need to get other developers in the city as well.
Right.
So what I redid this to development disadvantaged business individuals for the city where you register. What we've got to do is, if we're going to give you some money, or we're going to give you some tax incentives, there's a hiring goal of 10% of the workforce to be city residents.
Okay.
And if you meet that hiring goal, we're going to give you some incentive. If you come a little higher, we're going to give you more money. And how do we get those young people trained, you know what I mean, either through the unions or whatever that may be, able to do that job. But you either got to reward them up front and say, the only way you're going to dance is to meet this criteria, we're not going to give you the money.
Right.
And if we give you the money, we got to make sure you did what you were supposed to do. And that's what we need to do. We're all city projects. I don't care if it's downtown or whatever, and we need to have that for all businesses downtown. You got a lot of businesses don't have diversity. Right. They're not hiring people with disabilities either. Correct. So how do you going to hold them to the pocketbook is what's going to have to happen.
Okay, great. Now, and also one other thing I wanted to touch on, and it's something I've asked a couple of other candidates who are out there running for whether it be mayor or city council, because there's a lot going on this election year.
Yes, a lot going on, brother.
And of course, when we hear about election year, and I've heard you mention, I've heard others mention, I'm door to door. I'm knocking on doors. My question always is, if you were to get in the office when all the smoke clears, are we still going to be going door to door, knocking, worried about, being concerned for the citizens, things of that nature? Because I always worry about, okay, well, I got the seat now. You've seen it before. People get the job. I got the job now. I'm not worried about that. That's over.
I tell you that's not me. That's not the nature of who I am. You won't have to come to the 9th floor to see me. Okay. You'll see me in your neighborhood. I'll come listen to you wherever you want me to be. When I was city council person, I had meetings on the street. I remember at a meeting, a lady called me a cuss word up and down for a half hour. You gonna let her say that? Yeah, let her say. You know what you want? The crazy part was I paid her electric bill the week before and got her son out of Ferris.
Oh, wow. Oh.
But you got to be able to do that. You've got to be able to go. I'm not going to forget where I was at. The next mayor's got to wove in this business community that is really struggling for the city. They want to leave. Do they want to invest in the city? And if they don't invest, we're losing those jobs. They may be minor and minimal at the end of the day, but at least somebody's getting a job out of it. And you've got to be able to say, listen, people want to put the next candidate in the normal mayor. Want him in a suit and tie, want him looking nice and shaking hands, all that. Don't box me into that. That's not me.
Okay.
I'm a guy from the neighborhood, a street guy. I'm not going to say anything different. I'm a guy in the neighborhoods. Like I said, if you go to any neighbor in the city, people know me. If I get in, I'm not going to forget. I'm going to make sure whoever's working for me doesn't forget. Because we work for the residents. That's who we work for. Right. Whether you're rich, poor, in between, wherever, and the business community. We've got to make this city better, because as the city of Wilmington goes, so goes the state of Delaware. Right. And we're the main clog with everything at the end of the day. Okay. And we want people to say, yeah, I want to move to Wilmington. I want to get to Wilmington's where I want to live at. I want to go to Bear, I want to get away from it. Oh, you live in Wilmington? You all right? You afraid? Exactly. You know that.
Yes.
People say that all the time. I don't care who you are. We got to change that perception. And that would be my top priority.
Okay. And one other thing, and again, I would think this probably impacts the youth more than anything, but it does impact a lot of people. We sprinkled on it a little bit throughout the show. We were talking about the arts. We talked about arts, and again, another one of the things that's I'll say booming, for lack of a better, or at least growing, is the art scene, if you will. Like you said, we mentioned the art loop, and even when I'm at Levity, a lot of the times on 9th and Tatnall, the owner there, she's part of the art loop. So artists coming in and they work a showcase for a month or so. But again, that's something that I feel like could use more exposure. I think it's not there. What can we do to build that up and put that out there more? Because I'm starting to see a lot of the youth today are into the arts, whether it's the visual arts or the audio arts. You see them walking around town. I've seen on several occasions where someone just does live painting somewhere. And I'm like, dang.
I have a friend of mine that does it. He does the murals on the walls.
And how come it's only like 19 people around here that's knowing about this versus, 20,000 people in the community know about this. And how can we get funding because again, we've heard about starving artists. Yeah, sure, you can do that, but if you're not eating, you might say, well, I got to put the art to the back seat.
I think one of the debates is on the arts. Mm-hmm. One of the 4 debates that we have is all the arts at the Grand Opera House. Okay. What I think you have to have a plan for arts and how everybody fits into it, because I think the art community doesn't feel part of the city's administration and what they feel they want to do, the jazz festival, the blues festival, things like that, and all the permitting you have to have in order to have an event. And you've got to spread arts from not just downtown, everywhere, in parks, on corners, wherever that may be. And you may need to elevate it to a higher status than just in the office of the mayor, to make it more of like a directorship, or say, okay, you're in charge of arts and you're going to work on all the different arts, because there's a lot of different facets of arts in the city of Wilmington, and how to make it more prominent and well known, and how to engage the younger people in that, and older people too who have some things to give out, like Mr. Fate, who has her studio down on Lower Market Street.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So now that atomic dog is jumping in the background, so you know what that means. That means we're about to get out of here in a few minutes. But I got to ask you this, like I asked everybody else. Here we are. It's February 28th, 2016. We're almost through the first quarter of the year. This is crazy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
2016 is 3:07 p.m. That's right, y'all. We went into overtime. Who's going to stop me? What's on deck for the rest of the year for Kevin Kelly?
Well, what's on deck for me is just to continue to be knocking on doors, engaging people. Trying to organize my base, trying to raise some money. Okay. You got to raise some money in this game. It ain't cheap to be in politics. Getting ready for the debates, but just doing, what I do, neighborhood by neighborhood, house to house, talking to people, talking to young people. Like a guy today said, hey man, can you vote for me? He said, nah man, I've been arrested. I said, how long has it been? He didn't realize he could vote. He can now vote. Yeah. The young people, I still play basketball in the park. I'm still out all the time, but how do I present to people that there is a candidate who's going to listen to them, who's going to be accountable, who's going to return, like you said, if I get in, and still listen to them. So that's, and at the end of the day, like my son says, have some fun, brother. Definitely. It's as simple as that. Go have some fun.
There you go.
At the end of the day, I got a backup plan. I got a day job. If this is God has His plan for me, if this is the plan for me, we're going to make it work, and we're going to work it as best we can. They're not going to out-hustle me. That isn't going to happen. You know that. You know that. I'm all there. I'm going to get down on the mic and all. I've got the background it has to do, and you really got to look at this. Of all these 7 candidates, you can't fit everything you like into one big box, but who's the guy you really think is going to make a difference in the city? And that's, I believe, is myself.
Wonderful. All right, now, that was Kevin Kelly, everybody. We can't get out of here without letting our people tell the good world something before we leave. AC, tell your people something.
Hey, man, today was a great interview, man. Good stuff, being said. Hey, y'all better pay attention and listen up, man.